I was 16 when my parents decided I had ruined their lives. It happened on an ordinary evening, the kind where nothing dramatic is supposed to happen. My father had just come home from work, and my mother was making dinner in the kitchen. But my hands were shaking, because in my pocket was a small white test that had just changed everything. 2 pink lines. Positive. Pregnant. I didn't know how to say it. I didn't know where to start. My heart was beating so loudly I could barely hear my own voice. Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something. They both looked at me. At first, there was confusion. Then I placed the test on the table. For a moment, nobody spoke. My father stared at it like it was something dirty. My mother covered her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. "What is this?" my father asked. "You know what it is?" I whispered. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything I had ever experienced. Finally, my mother spoke, but her voice wasn't soft or worried. It was angry. "What have you done?" Those 4 words cut deeper than any punishment ever could. "I didn't mean for this to happen," I said quickly. "I'm scared. I just need help." But they weren't listening. My father stood up. So suddenly the chair scraped loudly across the floor. "Who is the father?" he demanded. I told them. A boy from school. 17. At first he promised he would help, that we would figure things out together. But promises from scared teenagers don't last long. My father laughed bitterly. "You've destroyed your future," he said. My mother started crying. Not because she felt sorry for me. Because she felt ashamed. "What will people say?" she kept repeating. That was the moment I understood something painful. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about their reputation. After almost an hour of arguing, my father made a decision. A cold one. "You cannot stay here." For a second, I thought I heard him wrong. "What?" I asked quietly. "You made this mistake," he said. "You deal with it." My mother didn't stop him. She didn't defend me. She just looked away. 2 days later, my bags were packed. A few clothes, some school books, and nothing else. When I stood at the front door, hoping, just hoping, that someone would change their mind, my father said the last thing I would hear from him for years. "Don't come back until you fix this." Then the door closed. Just like that, I wasn't their daughter anymore. I spent the first night crying on a friend's couch, terrified about the future growing inside me. But life doesn't stop for broken hearts. I found a job at a small diner, worked long shifts, saved every dollar. I told myself I would survive no matter what. Months later, everything changed again. A sudden pain, a hospital room, bright lights, doctors rushing around. And when I woke up, the baby was gone. Miscarriage. My son never even got the chance to breathe. After that day, I made a promise to myself. I would never beg anyone to stay in my life again. Years passed. I rebuilt everything from nothing. And my parents never contacted me. Not once. Until 12 years later, when a message arrived from an unknown number. 3 simple words. "Can we talk?" They had heard a rumor about a grandson, about the child they once rejected. Backhand index pointing, right? They had no idea the grandson they wanted to meet had never existed. The message stayed on my phone for 3 days before I replied. Why? That was all I wrote. A minute later, the reply came. "We want to see you. And our grandson." I stared at the screen for a long time. Our grandson. The words felt strange, almost unreal. For 12 years, they had never asked if I was alive. But now they suddenly wanted a child they had once rejected before he was even born. I agreed to meet them at a small cafe near my office. When I walked in, I recognized them instantly. My father looked older. My mother looked nervous. But the moment they saw me, their faces lit up. not with guilt, with expectation. My mother stood up quickly. "You look so successful," she said, glancing at my clothes, my watch, everything that hinted I had built a life without them. My father didn't waste time. "So, where is he?" he asked. "Who?" I said calmly. "Our grandson," my mother replied, smiling softly. "We heard you have a son." For a moment, neither of them noticed the silence that followed. Then I leaned back in my chair, calm, controlled. "You heard wrong," I said. Confusion crossed their faces. "What do you mean?" my father asked. I looked directly at them. The baby didn't survive. The words landed like a stone dropping into water. My mother's smile disappeared instantly. My father blinked in disbelief. What are you talking about?" he whispered. "I miscarried," I said quietly. Silence filled the table. For the first time since they arrived, they didn't know what to say. All those years they imagined a grandson, a second chance, a way to erase their guilt. But the truth was simple. There had never been a child to come back for. Backhand index pointing right. And suddenly, they realized the thing they wanted from me had never existed. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The noise of the cafe continued around us, cups clinking, people talking, a coffee machine hissing. But at our table, everything felt frozen. My mother's hands began to tremble. You lost the baby?" she asked softly. I nodded. "Years ago." Her eyes filled with tears almost instantly. This time they weren't loud or dramatic like before. They just quietly rolled down her face. My father looked down at the table. For the first time in my life, he seemed unsure of what to say. "We didn't know," he murmured. I studied his face. Older, weaker, but still the same man who had closed the door on a 16-year-old girl. "You didn't ask," I replied calmly. The words weren't angry, just honest. Another silence settled between us. My mother wiped her tears and looked at me again. "We thought maybe you had kept the baby. We thought we had a grandson somewhere." I understood then. This meeting wasn't really about me. It was about the idea of redemption. A grandson would have made everything easier. They could have visited, bought toys, pretended the past never happened. But reality doesn't rewrite itself just because people feel regret. "There was no grandson," I said gently. My father finally looked up. "Can we at least try to fix things now?" he asked. That question would have broken the old version of me. The 16-year-old who cried herself to sleep on a borrowed couch. But I wasn't that girl anymore. Years of struggle had changed something inside me. I had built a life without their approval. A business, a home, a future, and most importantly, peace. "I'm not angry anymore," I said slowly. Both of them looked surprised. "But that doesn't mean things go back to how they were." My mother nodded weakly. "We understand." Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. But for the first time, they weren't arguing. They were listening. I stood up from the table. "I hope you both have a good life," I said. My father frowned slightly. "Are you leaving already?" "Yes." I placed money on the table for my coffee. My mother looked at me one last time. "We really are proud of you," she whispered. I believed she meant it. But pride after abandonment feels different. It doesn't heal the past. It just acknowledges the outcome. As I walked toward the door, I felt something strange. Not sadness, not anger, freedom. Because the truth was simple. They hadn't come back for me. They came looking for a grandson. A second chance. A way to repair their conscience. But life doesn't always give people the redemption they expect. Outside the cafe, the air felt lighter. And for the first time in years, I realized something important. They didn't lose a grandson that day. They had already lost something much more valuable. A daughter who once needed them. And now no longer did. Backhand index pointing right. because the child they disowned survived without them and learned she never needed them to begin with.